Hi, everybody. This is Marty Watts with America Talk It Up with my co host, Ed Nunes. And boy, we have a great show today. We're going to be talking about our first subject today is the Final Four finals last night between Gonzaga versus the Baylor Bears. And boy, we thought it was going to be a closer game, but I'll tell you what, Ed, what a I think the reason why Baylor won that game, I think they play a tougher schedule than Gonzaga. They play that Big 12 was a murder schedule every night. Somebody good they had to play. What do you think, Ed?
I think you make a good point there, and I think Gonzaga after that overtime loss or win against UCLA might have been a little bit gassed, tired. But you know what? No excuses. Those two teams were supposed to meet on December 5th, and it had to be canceled because of COVID. I believe Baylor at that time had some players that tested positive, so they couldn't play the game. And I wish we could have seen that. But I'll tell you what, I thought going into the game, I had Gonzaga. I thought Gonzaga would win. I think I told you that. But it's hard to go wire to wire undefeated. They're trying to become the first team since Indiana in 1975, 76 to go undefeated. And you know what? Maceo Teague, Butler for Baylor. Those guys were great. They really were. And, Gonzaga tried to come back. And let's face it, Suggs, when you make a shot like that in overtime against UCLA, it emotionally drains you, right? The degree of difficulties of shots that those guys were making in that semifinal game. UCLA, Juzang, how good was he? Johnny Juzang was really good. And I think it drained you. They won the game, but they lost the battle because it drained them. It drained them emotionally, and it drained them a little bit physically. Give Baylor all the credit in the world, though. I thought Gonzaga was going to win, and Baylor really took it to them. And it was it was great to see college basketball back, Marty, because if you remember last year, there was no tournament, and it's great to see college basketball. And what kind of shot was that by Suggs on Saturday? Great shot, right? And Coach Mark Few said that they practice those situations in practice all the time. And it's hard to simulate those kind of shots, but it was just an amazing shot. But give Baylor the credit, all the credit. They deserve the championship, and they came and really took it to Gonzaga.
Well, you got to look at it this way. Gonzaga, that was one of the best games I've seen in many, many, many years. Maybe one of the greatest games in that semi when Gonzaga won on that last shot. And you got to give UCLA, they didn't lose the game. Somebody had to beat them on a great shot. But with that saying, Baylor played a real tough schedule. And the two losses they had, they were on COVID-19, had problems. And they came back like 2 weeks or 3 weeks later, and they lost a game to Kansas in a close one. And then they lost Oklahoma State against that kid. What's the kid that's going to be Cunningham, the one that's going to be number one? I think he scored 38 points to beat them. And then after that, they started looking like the old Baylor. And then the old Baylor now is, and they in my opinion, early in the season, I thought they were number one or Gonzaga, but you could tell Gonzaga didn't have the energy level that Baylor had in this game. And so here's something that you need to think about is that the last time a team from Texas won the national title, you have to go back to 1966, Texas Western. Louis Bedoin, a Sandia Matador, was the backup center on that team. David Lattin was the big center for Texas Western. Now it's UTEP. They made a movie about this with Don Haskins. But think about it. There's been some great teams from Texas that hasn't won it. And Baylor is the first team to do it since Don Haskins, Texas Western, now UTEP. What do you think of that, Ed?
That's a great reference. It's a great reference because I saw that movie, Glory Road, and it was a well done movie. Bobby Joe Hill, the guard from Texas Western. And remember, that was at a time where Adolph Rupp, it didn't recruit any black players until in the 70s. Then he did for Kentucky. Pat Riley played for Kentucky. Louis Dampier played for Kentucky, and they were heavy favorites going into that game. And Texas Western, you mentioned Big Daddy Lattin. Big Daddy Lattin, David Lattin played in the pros with Golden State for a while. And Shed, Ahmad Shed, I can't remember his name. Shed was his last name. But Texas Western took it to Kentucky in that game. I think that's a great point of reference and a great historical reference. It really is. I didn't even think about that. But Baylor, remember too, the program a couple years ago under Homer Drew. His son Scott Drew wins the championship. But a couple years ago, they had sanctions levied against them. They had to build the program up from scratch. and here they are, national champions. So that program is definitely on the rise for sure.
So there's a New Mexico connection to last night. David Bliss was the team that got him in trouble. David Bliss left New Mexico for the Baylor job, and he got in trouble and some shenanigans that was not very favorable to David Bliss. And this guy, Drew, took over a program. And the first 3 years, I think they were 3-14, or the first year or three, they got on sanctions, all because of David Bliss. He took over a program at the bottom of the barrel. So what a great story. And in 18 years, he won the national title. Now, I will tell you this, that team of Baylor had so much depth, and those guys were like, they had three really great point guards on one team. Their starting five got tired. They had another 4 or 5 guys. They have more depth than Gonzaga. Gonzaga has some great players, but you could tell Gonzaga was a little tired. They were quicker. And of course, I don't think Gonzaga had played a team as physical as those guys, even though UCLA gave them a physical game and slowed it down. So there's a difference. When you play in that conference, they have patsies on their schedule. Maybe St. Mary's or BYU. But if you want to know the truth, I think if Gonzaga played in the Big 12 or maybe the Southeast Conference or maybe the Big 10, they would have had some losses, because it's so hard to go undefeated when you're playing great teams night in and night out. What do you think, Ed?
I think that's a fair assessment. I think you're right about that. And it came to it came to fruition in the last game of the season when they played, a tough Baylor team after playing a very tough UCLA team. And the UCLA gave them everything they had, everything. It took a buzzer shot to beat them. So I think that's a good point. They big in the Big Ten and another conference, they would have 3, 4, 5 losses. I think that's fair enough.
And Baylor is a Baptist school and Gonzaga is a Catholic school. That was good to have 2 faith schools in there. That was nice to see, where faith is very important on campus. They have very strict student athlete rules. That's why when that Baylor football team, they had a couple black guys, or I don't want to say black, it could have been many guys that they had some problems with domestic violence. They had to clean that program up for football, because that school has a reputation as a Baptist clean-cut school, no drinking stuff. Same thing that would happen at BYU, Ed. So it was good to see those 2 schools that made it there. And of course, you notice at the end of the game, both teams circled up and had a prayer together. Did you saw that? I thought that was great sportsmanship. And another thing, I like the way the Baylor coach talked about Gonzaga coach as a first class, and I really do think Mark Few is a first class coach, and just quite frankly, they just got outplayed yesterday. They were just the better team that night was Baylor. Now, if they played a couple more times, who knows, Ed? But last night they were the best team.
You go through a tournament for reasons, right? And there's ups and downs, and that's why they call it March Madness. And I thought Gonzaga, again, beating UCLA in that semifinal, that might have been their championship. And what I mean, sometimes it's like a Pyrrhic victory, right? You win, but you lose because you don't have anything left. And that's what happened to Gonzaga. And they spin it all on the floor, spilled it on the floor on Saturday night. And we saw some good Suggs. Think about that play, Marty. He blocks the shot, takes it in transition, makes that great pass, Magic Johnson pass through traffic, right? The block, the assist, and then he makes the shot at the end to win the game. And sometimes when those things happen, you're emotionally spent and you don't know it, right? You say to yourself, this is the championship. Let's get up for this. We're ready. We're ready. And you just don't have it. And that's, I think, what happened to Gonzaga. But I'm not taking anything away from Baylor, because that's how good they play. Baylor was strong. Maceo Teague and Butler, those guys are good players. So I think I don't want to take anything away from Butler, but I think after a while your emotions are spent. You've been out there, you've been out there in football and in rugby. You played with the Albuquerque Aardvarks for years, and you'd see opponents and you want to get up for them, you want to beat them, and you know what? You go out there and you just don't have that extra little lift or tackle and whatever you needed in rugby. It's not there. And it's not because you just don't have it, right? And I'm not saying Gonzaga didn't play hard, but Butler came from the start. They led by what? It's 19 at the half. And Gonzaga cut it to 10. And then after that, Butler, it was all Butler. And that's, they played very well. You got to give them credit.
Well, Baylor has three great point guards. Very few basketball teams have three great point guards. Number two, in my opinion, I think Snugs, right?
Sucks.
Suggs. I think they're all talking about the Oklahoma State player Cunningham. I think Snugs is better. I think he'd be my choice in the first round in the NBA because I think he can do more things. But I guess that's up to the evaluators. But my eyeball test, I would take that guy from Gonzaga because he can do everything. He can play defense. He can move the ball off the court. He can hit the threes, clutch shots all year long. He hits clutch shots. So I like him a lot, Ed, to do well in the NBA.
You know what? He's a freshman. He just had a great NCAA tournament, and I think you have to strike while the iron's hot. I'd be surprised if he went back to Gonzaga. You're right; he's probably going to be a top 5 pick. So I think maybe third, fourth, but that's a lot of money right there. So I'm pretty sure he'll go to the pros. He'll declare hardship, I'm sure.
This was a good Final Four or March Madness. I thought the Sweet 16, there were some great wins. Loyola of Chicago knocking off Illinois. The run that UCLA had was Cinderella. They had to do a play-in game to get to the tournament.
Yes, that's right.
First team to make it to the Final Four to play in, I think. and that Cronin guy is, I remember. I'll tell you what, I do remember. Steve Alford told Fred Holberg and I years ago that he thought the best defensive coach in the country was this coach from Cincinnati, and that was Mick Cronin, the guy that coaches UCLA. And he said if that guy got any kind of offensive players, he could win a national title. And look what he did in the second year at UCLA. I thought he got that team playing well. Can you imagine if he gets better players? I think you're going to see UCLA in the Final Four in the next 2 or 3 years because I think he's probably the best coach they've had. The guy can coach defense flat out. Don't you think, Ed?
Well, think about what you just said. Steve Alford, who played for Bobby Knight, right? Bobby Knight was one of the best defensive coaches that there was. Steve Alford's teams here with New Mexico, they were darn good defensively, darn good. They were very good defensive teams when Steve Alford was here. So for him to say that, I think that says a lot. Steve Alford has been around the game for a long time. Now, again, Alford, the coach here, was great. Alford, the person, not so much. Never really cared for the guy as a community guy. I never thought he embraced Albuquerque or New Mexico. I always thought he was above the fray. I thought the same thing of Craig Neal. I didn't think there were people that loved New Mexico like Danny Gonzalez loves New Mexico. Those weren't those kind of guys. But I think he's right about Coach Cronin. I do agree with him there.
So Cronin's, if you look at his record, Ed, when he was coach at Cincinnati, his team was in the top 3 or 4 in defense in like 9 years in a row or something like that. And I remember when we played him, it was like a physical game. The scores are always in the low 60s or 50s. That's the kind of coach he is. So they definitely got a great coach in him. I like the way UCLA played. And as a heartbreaker, they got beat, but that was a great shot. You got to give the kid from Gonzaga what a shot he made. But I'll tell you this: I'm glad we had a Final Four. There wasn't any COVID-19 issues in the bubble, except before they went to the bubble. So I thought my hat's off to the NCAA to pull this thing off. And I'm so glad we had basketball and I'm glad it happened, because the country needs it. And the country needs a Final Four or March Madness, don't you think?
I'm glad we did it too. And, we'll get into high school sports here in a minute. You mentioned how many events Proview Networks is covering. It's a lot. And I think as we see, think about this. You had fans in the bubble over there at Indianapolis, and it was good to see the Baylor fans, the Houston fans, the UCLA fans, the Gonzaga, just cheering, right? All the things we used to take for granted and that we haven't seen for a year. The color, the team colors, although people are masked up, it's still good. Coach Cronin's dad up there, right? He's sitting up there and he's got the fist pump and it showed all the things. You know what? How important is athletics to Americans? Americans love their athletic events. They love it, man, right? Whether it's football, baseball, basketball, tennis, golf, bowling, cycling. The Americans love you know why? Because Americans love to see who's going to win and who's going to lose. Americans hate to lose. You know that. You and I hated losing more than I like winning. So I think just seeing all the drama of that. Remember, Jim McKay would say, "The thrill of victory and the agony of defeat," right? And we saw that on Saturday with the thrill with Suggs' last second shot. And then you saw the UCLA guys, and you felt so bad for them, right? You felt bad for them. When I used to officiate high school basketball, when a close game would happen, I would go to the locker room thinking, darn it, I'm sorry someone had to lose that game, because you felt bad for the losing team. So I think all those things you mentioned, it's good to see that again, right? Even though we hate to see anybody lose, but you love to see people competing on an amateur level. They're not getting paid. The pros are getting paid astronomical amounts of money, right? These guys are amateurs, man. So when we see them competing at that level, it gives us all an adrenaline rush, I think.
Well, everything you said, Ed, I'm 110%. I don't want them to politicize the game. I like the way they did the national anthem and everybody stood up for the national anthem. If somebody want to look down, that's fine. But I don't want the game to be politicized. I just want to watch a game like you and I, enjoy these kids playing and their effort. I don't want this to be some political wagon. And I think it's wrong when politics get involved. But I think the NCAA did a great job keeping that out of there. It made it really fresh, Ed. I like the idea the game started. There wasn't these protests. Nobody was putting their hands up. It was like the way the game should be played. Let's just play basketball and have fun watching it, Ed. And it was very enjoyable. That part I liked. And I'm glad they didn't get in this national anthem controversy, because either way, it's 50-50, 60-40, whatever the ratio is, but it just divides us. And we want to come together. And like you've always said, and I always believe, let's bring sports together. Let's bring these people together, right, Ed? Bring them together.
Well, sports does that. I think sports has done that for centuries. Well, in hundreds of years here in America, with Abner Doubleday, the invention of baseball, right? James Naismith in basketball, American football comes on in 1909 or 1900s. And Theodore Roosevelt, President Roosevelt, actually had I was thinking about banning it because people were getting hurt. And then they made the game safer, boxing, all the things that we see here in America. And we just love to see teams compete, right? Think about how much the CBS pays the NCAA for rights to the March Madness. Billions of dollars, right? Billions. The NFL, how much do they make a year in advertising rights? So that tells you that people just love to watch their sports here in America, right? Sometimes we're probably overboard. I know I am with my sports. I got my Lakers shirt on today. I've been a Laker fan since 1972. I've been a Dallas Cowboy fan since 1970, a Lobo fan since 1970. And I ride hard with my teams. I die hard with them, man. You and I are big Lobo fans, right? Big Lobo fans. So I think you're right. We need to see people. It was hard not to see that for a while. Fans in the stands. We're starting to see fans come back now. But even now in high school and covering high school basketball, without fans in the stands, it's a little sad. That's why what we're doing at Proview Networks is so important, right? We're putting out the coverage out there, and fans are able to see it on the stream, and they can't be there. But it's important for what we're doing. It's about the kids. It's about the community, and at least they're getting a chance to see the kids, right? Now it's different because they can't be there. Hopefully we go green here soon so they can get back in the gym. But I think one of the things that you mentioned, and school started yesterday, Marty. School started. So you can see, yeah, you can see the band teacher, you can see the DECA teacher, man. I can see the hall guard, the security guard, the guy that how much does socialization mean to us? It means a lot. So I think those things are starting to come back.
I was watching the news and they interviewed the girls and guys going back to school yesterday. Girls were crying, boys said, I'm so glad to see my buddies in classrooms, and we just want to be together. One girl was crying. She said, this is the best thing ever happened. I'm looking forward to seeing the girls, my girlfriends, that social thing that you and I had such a big thing in high school. That's what was missing. I'm so glad they're back. It was, I think yesterday was probably the most important day in my life in the last year. The kids are back, and seeing the kids yesterday going to the bus in my neighborhood, that was a good feeling to see, Ed. And then then I live by Cibola High School, and of course, and that was probably, now some kids don't have to go back if they choose not to, but most of these kids want to be back with their friends, and I think that APS did a good job setting up their classrooms. I saw pictures of it, and they really did a lot of work on this. So it was a good day for you and I. We've been advocating this for a long time, right, Ed? A long time.
Well, a lot of things. I think with anything in New Mexico, and I say this with respect, but anything in New Mexico seems like you have to cut through mounds of red tape to get where we want to go, right? It should be a walk from A to B, but it all of a sudden becomes a walk from A to H to X back to Y, back. You know what I mean? And then sometimes it's maddening, right? You think it's supposed to be just a straight walk, and then you all these mazes, but finally yesterday we got the kids, like you mentioned, their reaction to seeing each other again, right?
Yeah.
To seeing that guy that sits behind you, an English guy, right? The guy that is always making you laugh, or something, or else you hear him talk in class, and you're like, gosh, I didn't think about that. You learn from somebody else in class. If you're paying attention, there's somebody in history in the first row that's probably way smarter than you. I'd listen to some of my classmates. I'm like, dang, I didn't think about putting that in my report. So there's so many things, and then there's a guy in the other row that's making you laugh. You're not supposed to, but that's part of it, right? That's just part of the high school experience. So I'm excited that they're excited that you tell me that one girl cried. That's touching. It really is, because those are things we took for granted, seeing each other, right, going down the hall. They didn't get that for a whole year, and that they're happy about it. I'm glad to hear that.
Well, buddies like Snooky Marshall, Shirley Thompson, guys like that. Of course, in your case, Rick Zubiotti, these characters that we know in school, the guys we love to hang out at lunchtime, be buddies. You're talking about Rick Zubiotti and all your buddies. That's what makes going back to school so special. Hanging out with the guys, seeing the girls, talking about what's going on. I mean, and you're right. To be in first period to see your buddies. I mean, and then it's just the fact that the social part of going to school is so important, that makes who we are, and that's why yesterday was really big in the state of New Mexico for the Albuquerque School District.
You mentioned buddies, and one of my friends, Wes Henson, he used to be a Lobo football star, and he played for Highland. He just called me this morning, and those are buddies that I used to hang around with at Highland. When we walked in, we thought, the jocks owned that one corner by the radiator over there. So everybody had their own little crowds. There's the jocks, and then there's the school people, the Senate people, the nerds. Everybody, or who we thought were nerds. They were way smarter than us. We just didn't know that then. We thought we were so cool, right? And then we learned later that the nerds were the ones getting the 4.2 GPAs and working for corporations and companies. And that's okay, though. Highland was so diverse back in the day that you saw everything at Highland. You saw African Americans, Native Americans, Asian Americans, rich people, white people. You saw everything. And so I've got friends, I'm glad to say, from all walks of life to this day. But I think you're right. Going to the things we took for granted, and the kids had to stay. And I think what you're seeing too in some of these games is pent up emotion, right? Pent up adrenaline. I couldn't run and compete for a year. Some of these kids are seeing live action for the first time in over a year, especially in football. And you should have seen some of the hits on Thursday and Friday. Oh man. And it's funny, right? They can hit each other all game long, but at the end of the game, they can't shake hands. That's kind of funny, right? Kind of weird. They're knocking the heck out of each other, but at the end of the game, they got to wave. Same thing in basketball. There's no jump ball. The visiting team gets the ball. So, and then at the end of the game, they're guarding each other hard. At the end of the game, they just wave.
So the only thing I don't like is the players wearing the mask in a basketball game. I don't think they need to do that. I really don't, Ed. I mean, I did, and a lot of people agree with me on that. I bet you if we did a poll, there's no evidence if the kids are healthy and they're free of COVID, wearing a mask, I don't think it does much in the basketball. Now I can understand wearing a mask on the sidelines like they do in baseball and stuff, but wearing it out there, I just don't know. What's your thoughts on that?
A lot of people think the way you do. We were doing a game last night, and I always ask my color commentators what their thoughts are, and they have to do it right now because of the public health guidelines. But I don't know anybody that's happy about it. And the other thing is this, and Coach Ottman brought this up, and so did Coach Gary Sanchez from Highland. Sometimes when you have that mask on, are we hydrating enough because that mask is on, and are we drinking enough water to avoid cramping, things like that? Because if that mask being on, you're not as thinking as much as you normally are to get water, because of that mask. So hopefully, you know what, Marty, here's the way I think. For right now, we have to control what we can control. We can't control the public health department, right? We can suggest and not like what they suggest, but right now to get sports in, we'll do whatever it takes, right? The kids will do whatever it takes. They may not like it, but I guarantee they're happy as heck to be on the floor, on the field, on the track, on the diamond. Baseball practice started yesterday, I believe. So baseball's around the corner. So I think they're just happy to be out there.
Hey, Jimmy, let's take a break here. This is a good time to take a break. Jimmy, let's bring up our main sponsor for environmental, for the device that kills all the viruses. You want to put that up on the screen and do a commercial? Are we ready for that, Jimmy? Or do I need to give you some time? Maybe we need to give him some time to do that. There we go. I think we're going to come up with we've got a video we want to show you.
Causing COVID-19 and other pathogens are reminders that bad air can kill. You want protection to keep you healthy and give you peace of mind, but you won't settle for just any protection. You want the best out there. Active Pure. The Active Pure system has origins in the NASA space program. It's even been inducted into the Space Foundation Hall of Fame. Active Pure is used daily by hospitals, schools, sports arenas, restaurants, government buildings, homes, and more. So how does it work? The Active Pure system dispatches invisible supercharged submicroscopic particles at tremendous speed. The particles collide with viruses, bacteria, and other nasty things and immediately turn them into harmless byproducts. Active Pure works immediately on both air and surfaces. It comes in portable units built for any space, from gigantic ballrooms to elevators. It's affordable, easy to install, and virtually maintenance-free. It's like invisible personal protective equipment, or PPE, for you and your pets. Sounds too good to be true? Independent FDA-compliant lab testing has shown that
Active Pure neutralizes more than 99.9% of pathogens, including the virus that causes COVID-19.
Well, folks, if you didn't see the video, I'm sorry, it didn't pop up, but we want to thank our sponsors, Everguard Roofing and
virus that causes COVID-19.
Here's the
other pathogens are reminders that bad air can kill. You want protection to keep you healthy and give you peace of mind, but you won't settle for just any protection. You want the best out there. Active Pure. The Active Pure system has origins in the NASA space program. It's even been inducted into the Space Foundation Hall of Fame. Active Pure is used daily by hospitals, schools, sports arenas, restaurants, government buildings, homes, and more. So how does it work? The Active Pure system dispatches invisible supercharged submicroscopic particles at tremendous speed. The particles collide with viruses, bacteria, and other nasty things and immediately turn them into harmless byproducts. Active Pure works immediately on both air and surfaces. It comes in portable units built for any space, from gigantic ballrooms to elevators. It's affordable, easy to install, and virtually maintenance-free. It's like invisible personal protective equipment, or PPE, for you and your pets. Sounds too good to be true? Independent FDA-compliant lab testing has shown that within minutes, Active Pure neutralizes more than 99.9% of pathogens, including the virus that causes COVID-19. The Active Pure Medical Guardian, powered by the same Active Pure technology as our other products, has been cleared by the FDA as a Class II medical device. There's only one Active Pure. Beware of claims for other systems like HEPA, bipolar ionizers, and UV light. They're passive and slow. Some trap pathogens, but don't destroy them. In fact, many of them are so dangerous people can't even be in the same room while they operate. No system cleans the air faster, safer, or more effectively than Active Pure. To give your family and your customers peace of mind, choose Active Pure, protecting lives with air you can trust. To get Active Pure for your home, office, store, or organization, contact your local distributor.
Well, people should call 505-207-8877. If you know of a restaurant or a building where there's a lot of traffic, this device is a cost of like a laptop, Ed, and it kills 99% of the stuff out there. I think the smallest device can go up to a couple hundred square feet. The normal device covers like 3,000 square feet. And so we've already got 5 of these out there and they're working, Ed. And it's probably the most cost-effective way. And people want to feel when they go back to a restaurant or a building that the building is safe. And so, folks, call this number 207-888-77, area code 505-207-8877. There it is right there. And Active Pure is the thing you want to get. And I'm telling you, it's going to really help bring us back to normalcy if people start going out. And if you've gone to a restaurant, I'm still going to takeouts. I'm planning on going to have lunch this week at a safe restaurant. What are you doing, Ed, on this?
You know what? Mostly takeout. My sister and I met at Village Inn about two weeks ago, but I haven't gone to a restaurant other than that. My friend and I met at Los Cuates inside the bar about 3 weeks ago. So I've been to 2 restaurants, and my wife and I. But I got to say that I did get my second vaccine, and I'm past the 2-week period now, so I feel a little safer. And they said, again, the caution to the wind still, right? You got to still be careful. So, I now my wife and I still haven't gone out together to a restaurant. So maybe soon though. We talked about it. We went out to eat outdoors. We ate at the Daily Grind about a month ago outside. We ate outside there. So, but we do take out from local for sure.
So the outdoors, they're really expanding the outdoor facility. So anyway, that's good news, Ed. I'm going to get my final vaccine this week, and I'll be on the same level with you. And hopefully we can go out and do more things together. Proview is going to plan on having some social events with the coaches and the broadcasters when things get better. Hopefully we can do something in May or June, Ed. That might be we don't know how this is going. Good news yesterday, I think there was 0 people died and there was only less than 100 cases. That's pretty good. So the numbers are getting better.
They're coming down. They're definitely coming down. And I think President Biden announced today that everyone's going to have access to a vaccine by April 19th. I thought he said that. So the more vaccines are coming. So, but again, not everyone's going to get vaccinated, and that's understandable. Not everyone's believes in vaccines, and you can't make them get it, right? So, but I think the cases, as you mentioned, are coming down. That's good.
So with that saying, so last week, Proview Networks, and by the way, you can watch all these high school games in New Mexico on the National High School Network. You can watch Ed Nunes do his play-by-play. He's, as I say, he's the legendary Ed Nunes, the voice of the Western New Mexico Mustangs. But he's doing a lot of high school games, and then we're having 1 or 2 games a night on Comcast Channel 26. If you have Comcast television subscription, you can watch that. But the latest numbers I got from my boss, Steve Davis, we are over 100,000 people has gone up to watch these games. And if you count Channel 26, we could have about 185,000 views in 4.5 weeks That's pretty darn good, Ed.
Again, I think the trend started last year when we were unable to do games with fans in the stands, and a 3-day period. I believe we had, I don't know how many viewers we had in the 3-day period. It was a lot last year's state basketball tournament. Footballs, I think we had 2,500 views on one day for a football game last week, which was pretty good. But fans can come in the stands in football, 25% or whatever were allowed in. But in basketball, there's no fans allowed in. So, and they're very strict about it. There was a fan there last night at Volcano Vista, and there wasn't, they made it clear at the door. They're watching very carefully who should be in and who should not be in. So I think what we're doing, as far as what we're doing streaming the games, it's so important for parents to be able to watch their kids. I remember when my son played at St. Pius, and I remember he had one-on-one at the end of the game against Academy. He was a junior, and I couldn't even look. I was like this. I couldn't even look up. He did make one of the free throws to seal the game. But I was there, right? I was there feeling the experience. And I think it's hard for fans not to be there, but we're bringing the game into their living room, into their computer, on their phone, and they can at least follow the action, right? How important is it to see their kid, to see them after a year of not playing? And and parents sharing the joy, right? They share in the wins and losses too. I would share with my son when we won, and when we lost, when he coached at Pius, if he lost, my son was 52-6 in 3 years as a coach at St. Pius. He was a good little coach. But when he did lose, man, he thought the world was ending, right? So I think it's good for the parents to be able to see these games. Proview Networks is doing an amazing job. As we mentioned, the directors and the producers are the ones that make things happen. Without them, there's no shows. Jimmy Tran's a wonderful director. There's nothing that happens without those guys behind the scenes.
Well, you can go up to ProviewNetworks.com and you can go up and buy a National High School Network pass. Pass. I guess they call it the passes. And it costs us about $55 for the year. I think it's $10 and something a month. But you can watch these games, and of course, you can go back and watch the replay of the game if you don't get the game live. That's why it's important that the National High School Network has been doing this. We've been involved with them for almost 6 or 7 years. And you're right, Ed. People can't go to these gyms, so they go up and watch these games. And we're providing that. Now, if you have a Comcast cable subscription, you can watch some of these games on Channel 26. And we're going to try to expand that. Hopefully going into August next year, we're going to have more sources. But to be honest with you, every game we produce live is on the National High School Network. And by buying a pass, what they call it, passport to get on, you can go back. If you can't get the game, you can go back and watch the replay. So that's what makes it really good. And and with that saying, I don't know. I did some homework, Ed. There's nobody in Austin, nobody in Salt Lake City, Tucson, Phoenix, Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Dallas, Fort Worth, Shreveport, Omaha, Kansas City, Denver, Portland, San Diego, and LA is doing 45 games a week, 200 games, more than 200 games a month. Nobody's doing what we're doing. We're making sports history. Nobody's even come close. And by the way, we have 7 announcers who are doing play-by-play, and our announcers were voted by SPU as the Golden Mic, Golden Headset Award. So congratulations for that. But the fact is, nobody is doing what we're doing in the country, Ed. Nobody.
Well, no, it's a proud moment for Proview Networks. It really is. And again, it's a service, especially now. Think about this, Marty. And, I talked to Steve Davis. It must have been 2 months ago before this even went off. And we weren't even sure that sports was going to happen. At that time, I think Steve was more 30-70 that it wouldn't. And then all of a sudden it came out of nowhere that we were going to play. And so you think about this too. We won't see a season like this again, where football and volleyball and soccer and basketball and then baseball and then track and field are all bunched together. We will never see that, right? Football concluded last week, and the soccer is going to be over this week, and then basketball till May, and then baseball, and then track and field. We'll be busy till about June. You mentioned about the middle of June, and then the guys at Proview get a month off. July's off in August, and then we start late August again. So I call it a sprint to June. That's what it is. And all of us have been pitching in. All of us collectively have been having tons of games. We've got some guys doing play-by-play for the first time, and they're doing great at it. So I think everybody's pitched in, and really all hands on deck model, right? Everybody has really pitched in great.
So Ed, you and I, when this ends in June, you and I and all the broadcasters and Steve Davis, we're gonna go in a room maybe with 2 or 3 TV cameras, and we're gonna set up a situation where we're all gonna sit down and do a 1-hour documentary of what your experience of this special season that will hopefully will never happen again. I hope it doesn't happen for another 100 years. Okay. And I'm telling you, will that be special? So I think we'll do a documentary, we'll do a round table, and you guys can talk about your experience, what you went through the last 4 months. And every one of you guys are going to have different stories and stuff. I think it would be a great show. What do you think?
I think it's a great idea because you mentioned it's a season unlike any other season. And we're all gonna have, I remember the first week, I was at Western on Saturday, and then I had 4 or 5 games the first week. And I think everybody's reaction to the season has been extraordinary, right? They're just happy they're out there playing. You hear the cowbells. Last week at University Stadium, Socorro fans brought the cowbells. I love it. I listen to that, right? So I think we're all going to have our own. And I tell you what, we have to include the producers and directors in that, because those guys have their own stories about taking stuff down, setting it up, taking it down, setting it up, making sure the broadcast is on. They've got their own stories, and we must hear from them too.
So I think it would be a great round table with all of us sitting there, because we're making sports history. And by the way, nobody is doing what we're doing in the country. This is a special moment in sports. Every one of you guys, when you do a broadcast, you're making history. This has never been done. And I will tell you this, I just think this is going to be a great show. We'll get everybody together. We'll probably do it in July, and we'll all talk about our experience we went through the last 4 months of the season. And I'm telling you right now, Ed, I can't wait to hear some of your stories. Leroy Lucero, Tyler Ortega, Aaron Rivera, of course, the great Richard Tripp, Sebastian, Noel, and who else? I'm missing somebody. Roger.
JJ Buck, Roger.
JJ Buck. Everybody has experience. And of course, Steve, the masterminded. This is special stuff. And I'm telling you, people so I was able to pick up 7 new customers for the broadcast. And one of my lead stories, sales pitch, was come on board and join our history. Be part of New Mexico history, because people are going to look back at this maybe 20 years from now or 10 years, and they're going to wonder how we did it, how we pulled it off.
Yeah, it's definitely something that's going to be thought about, talked about for a long. We won't forget it. The season that I don't even know how to describe it, but season that we have never experienced, as I mentioned, with sports being bunched up against each other. Basketball, football. Usually, football's in the fall, then basketball follows. Soccer's in the fall, volleyball's in the fall, and to have them all together in one short season. I'll tell you, it's been taxing, but I always mention the producers and directors, because they're the ones that are the stars. They're the ones that make things happen. So, but I'll tell you, somebody that loves sports the way I do, it's great to see kids out there competing. Saturday's game, Sandia and El Dorado boys, my son did that game with me, and he just did a great job. He's a great color commentator. But the intensity of that game, now you're a Sandia Matador. Now, people might liken these games to summer league games, but when you put the uniform on and you've got your warm-ups on, and you hear the national anthem, and you've got 3 referees there, the intensity ratchets up 90% to 100%. And though you won, Sandia won on an 8-0 run, and El Dorado coach Roy Sanchez called timeout, and the Sandia bench made enough noise for 200 people, man. That's how that pent up emotion and excitement, right, that they haven't been able to exhibit for a year. our player of the game, Sean Johnson, scored 29 points for Sandia. 29 points. He comes up for the interview and he says, "You know what? Nobody's respecting our team. We're not in the rankings. We're coming for a state championship." You got to love it. I told him, I said, "You know what, kid? Good for you. Good for you. If that's what motivates you from within, good for you." So I think these kids, again, remember when you put on the uniform, and in summer league games are different. They're different because you're playing everybody. Everybody's got to play during the summer. This is different. Even though the stands, no one's in the stands, the intensity in that game would have surprised you. Danny Brown on one side, Roy Sanchez on the other. They're getting after it. And the Sandia, watch out for Sandia. He's not wrong about that. He's a good player. They've got several good players there. Sean Baker's son, Eli Lovato, the point guard. He's only a sophomore. Watch out for Sandia. They look pretty good.
Well, it's funny. Roy Sanchez and Danny Brown, they're like best friends, Ed. When they're not coaching basketball, guess who they hang out together? Both of those guys. But you would never notice it when you see them on the sidelines. Like they're at each other. You know what I mean? They want to beat each other so bad. But afterwards, what's so great about Roy Sanchez and Danny, they love each other. They're like brothers. But but that game, I did saw part of it, and I'm telling you, Danny wanted to beat Roy as bad as Roy wanted to beat Danny, and was it intense on the sideline. But if you didn't know those two guys, you wouldn't know that they're best buddies and they hang out together. You know what I mean?
I love Danny Brown. I love Roy Sanchez. They're great guys. Both of them are great coaches and great people. You're right. They do. They're as competitive as it comes. They really are. And when it's over, they go have an adult beverage somewhere. But they're good people.
And they love each other. But that's why I love Roy Sanchez and Danny Brown. When they get on the court, and that's a rivalry that goes back to 1971, the El Dorado Sandia. I played one of the first ones ever played in basketball. And what a great rival that is. And so it was great that you're able to see that. And I think this basketball tournament, the state tournament's going to be the finals are going to be the first week of May. I think there's going to be some surprises, Ed. I don't think it's going to be that cut and dry who's the best team. What do you think?
You know what? I think this year more than any year, that again, 8 teams are going to be eligible. I believe. I'm not sure how the format goes. 8 teams in each class, I believe. But I think this year you're going to see. Again, it's a shortened season. And remember the other thing. Normally we have practice time, right, between games, maybe a week or so sometimes, to work on things, the press offense, the press, shooting, ball handling, free throws, rebounding. We have time to work on those things, defense. And right now with an abbreviated season, Morty, there's no time. We're using our games to practice, which in some cases is good. In some cases it's bad, because I need to work with my guys about certain things, late game situations, inbounds plays, out of bounds plays, right? There's certain things I need to work on, offensive rebounding. And with the shortened season, and everybody's got to face the same thing, right? Everybody's in the same boat. It's not easy. So I think this year more than any year now Las Cruces looks really good, and boys class 5A, they look very good. Volcano Vista looks pretty good, and boys 5A. So El Dorado's still a contender. But if you look at Las Cruces, Isaiah Carr, they're one of their better players, and Deuce Benjamin, the son of William Benjamin. Remember, Cruces is the defending champs. And Coach Benjamin, he loves to let us Albuquerqueans know, man, that the Bulldogs are coming to town. And I love Coach Benjamin. I've got a personal relationship with him. He's a good friend and a great New Mexico State Aggie. So I think the points you make about the state tournament, I think you're right.
Well, with that saying, folks, check out the National High School Network.com, and just go to the state of New Mexico, and they'll list all the games that are being played. Look at the ones that ProView is producing, and a lot of those games, Ed Nunes is doing the broadcast, and of course you'll get to hear some of our other guys: Richard Tripp, Tyler Ortega, Aaron Rivera, Leroy Lucero. We've got Roger. We've got Sebastian. We've got so many great broadcasters. We might have
JJ Buck
and JJ Buck. We might have the greatest numbers of broadcasts under one network than anywhere in the country. I don't think any, except if you look at a national network like ESPN or whatever. But for a local little network, we must be one of the best in the country with all those play-by-play guys, right, Ed?
No, well, you know what? I'll tell you one thing, and this is not a knock on anybody. It's a craft that it takes time to develop. It's not, we've got some guys that just started and they're doing well, and they'll take time to develop, like I took time to develop. And now I got a story to tell you. And I was on Henry T's Game Face podcast yesterday, and when I was broadcasting with Henry, I was his color guy. I was just content to be his color guy. I didn't think about being a play-by-play guy. One time we're doing a game at the pit, and in the middle of the third quarter, he says, "Okay, fans, now making his debut on play-by-play, Ed Nunez." And this is out of the blue, like throwing you into the deep end of the pool, right? Now, I panicked a little bit. I'm like, oh, he didn't even tell me he was going to do that. He never told me that. But I owe him a lot. I owe him a lot to my broadcasting career, because if he hadn't done that, I might have been content to be a color guy my whole career and never would have stepped out of that comfort zone, right? So I owe Henry a lot. And now I'll tell you one thing. It's taken me a long time to hone my craft. I'm still working on it. I still listen to myself. I still want to get better. But I always remember this too. I'm there for the kids. It's not about me, right? I just want to make sure I give a good description of the game for the people listening. That's it. And hopefully that we do, right? That's what it's about. It's about the kids, it's about the community, it's about the teams. Bottom line.
Well, Henry helped so many people launch their broadcast career, and we owe a lot to Henry, because back in the late 70s, early 80s, 90s, even the year 2000, the only voice that did high school sports was basically Henry DeFoya. He was dedicated to his craft. He did all those games, and my hat's out for him. He's definitely it's like Mike Roberts, the voice of the Lobos for what, 30, 35, 40 years. Henry was the same thing. So we've been very fortunate. We've had some great Hall of Fame announcers like Connie Alexander, who went on to do national things. He did the the Cotton Bowl, the Liberty Bowl. He did a Rose Bowl game. He was quite an announcer, and he worked with Jack Buck, Harry Carey. Can you imagine the guys like that? That, of course, Dick Hemberg and him did a lot of college basketball games together. So we're lucky we've had some great broadcasters. And of course, we've got our current Lobo broadcaster, Robert Poynter. He's really good for baseball and sports. So we're lucky, but we've got 7 young guys, or not. I would say we're a mixture of old pro and young guns, right? A little bit of old pro, young guns, and we've really got a great stable of young announcers. And if you go up to National High School Network, you'll get a chance to hear them talk. Now, Ed, tell me this: do you think that the hardest thing in a broadcast, especially if you're doing as many games you are, is to do prep? Because most professional broadcasters might have a whole week to get ready for 1, maybe 2 games at the most. But the way we've got it set up, we've got games every night. It's really hard to get the info on these guys. Now, I noticed early in the season it's tough, but as the season gets going and the more you see these teams, you get to know some of these players. But I think it's a real difficult challenge you have. Am I right?
That's a good point. And one of the things that last night I worked with David Medina, who used to coach girls at Del Norte, and he coached at Hope. And he was able to call the Valley coach in Volcano, but he called the Volcano Vista coach. But I called the Valley coach myself, and I had already talked to Lisa Villarreal last week about Volcano Vista. So we both had some information to share. Tomorrow night, I've got Volcano Vista girls and Highland girls, and I had Coach Lonnie Neal on earlier for the sports desk, and I've talked to Coach Neal already, but I just kind of want to get his thoughts about the game tomorrow. So you're right. It's not easy getting that information, but the more you see a team, you become familiar with who their key players are and kind of how they do things.
And you do it as good as anybody. I mean, you do it you're on the phone all the time talking to a coach or getting information. I don't know how many times people have come up to me and said, that Ed Nunez, he sure calls me all the time, but I'll tell you what, I'm glad I give him the info, because you use it. A good broadcaster has tidbits on all these players, and the more you get to know them, the better it is, and so I think that's what makes you a great broadcaster, because I think prep is everything. Lots of times you just don't get enough of it because we have so many games, but one of the fallbacks when you're doing 45 games a week. So
No, it very much is. Like now Saturday, I've got Volcano Vista and Valley boys at Volcano Vista. Now I asked Coach Coleman to work with me, and at first I wasn't sure if he wanted to because it's Valley, right? Sometimes guys don't want to go do a team that they just coached, but no, he said he wanted to do it. And I know Coach Coleman would be down the line. I have no doubt he'll show no bias towards Valley. Him and Danny Brown or Greg Brown at Volcano Vista are very good friends. Very good friends. So I'm looking now. He can give me some scouting report on Valley because he knows that team. He coached them last year, and he knows Easy Panas, who took over for him. All he has to do is call Coach Panas. He's got a scouting report right there, and Coach Coleman knows half those players anyway. So with Coach Brown, we kind of know what players were good for him last year. So Joe Coleman and I can't wait to. Here's what I've been doing, by the way. I've been using revolving color commentators. I used David Medina from Hope, Ria Rodet from St. Pius, Coach Coleman from Valley, my son. I'll use him, and then I'm going to use Damian Segura from St. Pius. So I think it's good to bring in a revolving door of different coaches that were commentators. I think it's good for the games. It's good to have good partners that know how to analyze basketball, and it's been exciting for me to call these people and see if they want to work, and all of them have said yes.
Well, now that list is like a who's list of basketball. I get excited when the Nunes and Nunes combination comes together because talking about father-son chemistry, father-son, I mean, your son knows basketball backwards and forwards. It's one of the great combos. I don't think there's a father-son combo broadcasting. There might be people like this around the country, but I don't know if anybody's as good as you two guys when you do a basketball game. It's like a magic moment. I mean, the way I look at it is my wife says you come away with a religious experience. And when she said that, I said, well, that's pretty good stuff. Right, Ed?
I would never liken it to that. I would never say that. But I'll tell you one thing about my son is that he started working games with me when he was 20. He's 28 now. So he's working, the very first game I did for Proview Networks in 2012, December of 2012, I remember asking JD Healy, is it okay if I bring my son? And JD said yes. And my son has been look, we've got great commentators on the network. There's no question. I'll put my son up against any of them, and except maybe Damian Segura and Ivan Sanchez, who are probably the best commentators that I've heard. My son is very, very good. He's very good because he coached. Now he sees things in a game that I might not see. They're running a 2-3 at the backdoor pick. They cut off the elbow. He knows how to talk about the particulars of a game. And I'll tell you, I appreciate you saying that because when we do games together, you're right. We do have an incredible chemistry, and I'm just so proud of him. I'm so proud of him because he sounds so good. He knows how to break the game down, and it's all for the kids. He's very happy to be doing it with his father, and we can always look back on that someday. And I think you're right. There's not many father-son broadcast teams that I know of, so I'm glad that my son and I formed one. And he, like I said, he's very good. He's very knowledgeable. I'm not just bringing him on. Put it like this. Steve wouldn't let me do it anyway. Steve Davis would say, no. I'm not bringing him on just because he's my son. He adds value to the broadcast for sure.
Well, folks, if you don't know about Ed's Nunes' son, and I don't mind bragging about him because I've met him and he's a class act. His son went on to go to law school. He went to got his degree, and then he went to law school and was one of the top rank in his class, and he's now a practicing attorney. And so he probably could have, if he really wanted to be a professional broadcaster and he really wanted to put all this time in, I think he could have done it, Ed, but he decided to go to law, and we'll see how he does in the law field. But what an incredible, you must be really proud to have a son to go to law school, top in his class, and now he's working for, what's the firm is he working for now?
He just went to Butt, Thorson and Bear. He just started with them about a month ago. So he was at the assistant DA with the state, and he got an offer from another firm, and he took it, and he's very happy. He's doing very well.
So you must be proud. And there's no doubt in my mind, if he really wanted to be a professional broadcaster like his dad, he could have done it easily, right? Yeah, but he chose law, and I understand that. That's why every time you guys get together in the booth, it's pretty special stuff.
I never take that for granted because we don't know, we called a lot of games together. And like I said, we have just incredible chemistry because he knows exactly what I leave it to him. Let him break down the huddle. Let him break down the particulars of the game. Sometimes I have to stop myself because remember one thing, I coached him. We played ball together in some pretty competitive ball until I couldn't play anymore. So we've done a lot of things basketball wise together. We coached together too. We coached the team together. I coached him. We played ball together and we broadcast games together. So sometimes there's so many things I want to say, and then I have to remember, let Nick handle that. Let my son handle the breaking down of the game, the analyzing. And sometimes as a referee that used to ref and used to coach and I played, sometimes it's hard for me to zip it. It's like let them handle that because I want to say some things too. And it's just passion, right? It's just passion. And sometimes I have to dial it back.
So we're going to break for our sponsors. But one thing I am looking forward to, and I'm going to make sure I watch this, is when Nick and Ed get together and do a state tournament final for one of those finals. I can't wait. I know you guys are going to do one together. It wouldn't be right without you two in a state final game. But boy, that's going to be, folks, if you get a chance, it's magic. Of course, I'm overdoing it. Maybe it's a religious experience, but boy, you'll never see a father-son combination as Nick and Ed. Am I right, Ed? I don't think it will ever happen like the way you guys do it. So let's break for commercial.
I think it's been 60 minutes, Marty. I think what Jimmy said. I don't know.
Yeah. So I think our time has run out. I think we want to thank all our sponsors. And Jimmy, I think we're right. We ran out of time. Ed and I could talk all day, right, Ed? We could go on. And by the way, folks, we come in with this thing with the final. Anyway, I'm going to sign off here. We'll look forward to seeing the next American Talk It Up.